forget maybe everything you think you know about the devil. That image of him, ruling hell with a pitchfork. If that's stuck in your head, well, the sources we've been digging into might just surprise you.
That's absolutely right. For this deep dive, we've really immersed ourselves in some key biblical texts. We're talking Job, 1 Peter, Revelation, Paul's letters, all trying to answer a question that maybe sounds simple but isn't. Where is the devil actually operating right now, according to these texts? And maybe more importantly, what does that mean for you?
Exactly. Because that popular image, the sort of cartoon villain in his fiery kingdom, our sources seem to suggest that might actually be a masterclass in deception.
It really could be.
So our mission today is to sort of peel back those layers, those misconceptions, and try to get to the biblical understanding. Where is he? What's his actual role right now?
And it's pretty striking how consistent these different books are, They paint this picture of an adversary who's frankly much more active and involved in our world than pop culture lets on.
Right. Okay, so let's get right to it. That classic picture. Devil, king of hell, flames, torment, the whole 9 yards. Where does that even come from?
Yeah.
And why do the sources hint it could be, misleading?
Well, it's fascinating because the Bible absolutely talks about hell, Gehenna, the lake of fire, places of, judgment and suffering.
Sure.
But the idea of Satan ruling it, presiding over it like a king, that's not really explicitly laid out in our sources. In fact, you could argue the image makes him seem kind of contained, right? Locked away.
Yeah, almost convenient, like he's stuck down there.
Exactly. When his real activity, according to these texts, seems to be happening elsewhere.
Which brings us straight to the book of Job. Now this really stood out to me. Can you walk us through what Job tells us about where Satan hangs out?
Definitely. So in Job, chapters 1 and 2, you get these incredible scenes. Satan appears before God along with the sons of God, these heavenly beings.
Right.
And both times, God asks him, essentially, where have you been? And Satan's answer is identical. From roaming throughout the earth, going back and forth on
roaming the earth, going back and forth. So right there in one of the oldest books, possibly, he's active on earth, not overseeing punishment somewhere else.
Precisely. It immediately establishes his sphere of operation as terrestrial, as part of this world system.
That completely shifts the focus, doesn't it?
It really does. And, this isn't just an Old Testament thing. That theme carries right through. Think about 1 Peter 5.8. What's the warning there?
Peter tells us, be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Like a prowling lion.
Yeah. What does a lion do?
It hunts where its prey is. It doesn't prowl around its cage, it stalks its territory.
Exactly. The analogy is powerful. If we're the potential prey, Peter's saying his hunting ground is right here, where we live, on Earth.
Okay, so if he's prowling here, it really begs the question, what is hell then, according to the scriptures? Because it's definitely mentioned.
Right, it is. We see terms like Gehenna, the Valley of Hinnom, this place of fiery judgment. And then Revelation talks about the lake of fire.
Yeah, the ultimate destination.
Just the key word, destination. The texts consistently present hell, or the lake of fire, as a place of future judgment. Look at Matthew 25.41. Jesus talks about the eternal fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. Prepared for them.
Prepared for. That implies it's waiting for them, not their current address?
Exactly. It indicates a future sentence, a place made ready for their eventual confinement, not their current base of operations or their kingdom.
So hell isn't his throne room, it's his future prison cell. Wow, okay, that's a major distinction. So if he's not busy running hell, what is he doing? What are his main jobs, according to these texts?
The sources seem to highlight three main roles. Consistently, he's the deceiver, the tempter, and the accuser.
Okay, let's take deceiver first.
Right. Revelation 12.9 is pretty potent here. It calls him the great dragon, that ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. And crucially, it adds, he was hurled down to the earth.
Leads the whole world astray. Hurled to the earth. So deception on a global scale happening right here.
That seems to be the picture. His primary tactic is confusion, distortion, making bad look good, good look bad, clouding judgment.
Like muddying the waters.
Precisely. Paul puts it starkly in 2 Corinthians 4.4. He calls Satan the god of this age who has blinded the minds of unbelievers.
The god of this age, blinding minds. So his focus isn't stoking literal fires below, but messing with perception up here.
Yes. Interfering with understanding, particularly about spiritual truth, about Christ. Think about how that plays out. Misinformation, twisting values. It's very much about manipulating how people see reality.
That's quite a thought. Okay, what about tempter? We all kind of know that one.
We do. And the classic example, the temptation of Jesus in Matthew 4. Where did that happen?
In the wilderness.
Where?
On earth.
Right. Not a tour of hell. Satan offered Jesus worldly kingdoms power here. He targets our weaknesses or desires, trying to pull us off course away from God's way.
Exploiting vulnerabilities that exist in this life.
Exactly. And then there's the third role, accuser.
Right, the accuser of the brethren, I think it's called.
Revelation 12.10 again.
Yeah.
He's called the accuser of our brothers and sisters, who accuses them before our God day and night.
Day and night, constantly.
It depicts this relentless activity of finding fault, pointing out flaws, trying to undermine believers, seemingly in the spiritual or heavenly court, as it were.
So he's observing, interfering, accusing. Again, very active, very involved, not passively reigning somewhere else.
It paints a picture of constant engagement, constant opposition.
This really changes the landscape of the spiritual battle, doesn't it? It's not some abstract thing happening out there. Paul really gets into this in Ephesians, right?
Oh, absolutely. Ephesians 6.12 is crucial. Paul says flat out, our struggle is not against flesh and blood.
Yeah, not against people.
But against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realm.
Okay, heavenly realms. Does that mean like actual heaven, paradise?
Not necessarily God's dwelling place. It usually refers to the unseen spiritual dimension that parallels our world. It's the operational sphere of these spiritual forces, both good and evil. It's where this conflict happens.
And Satan operates within that realm, as we saw in Job.
Yeah.
Still having some level of access, even though he's fallen. It's complex.
It shows God's sovereignty is over all realms, even the ones where evil operates permissively for now.
So let's circle back. Why is understanding this, that the devil isn't currently running hell? Why is that so important for us? What's the danger of holding on to that old image?
Well, I think the main danger is complacency. If you think the enemy is safely locked away, managing his own little fiery kingdom.
You might let your guard down here.
Exactly. You might underestimate his influence right now in this world, in your life. You might not recognize the spiritual battle that Paul insists is happening.
It's almost like the perfect disguise, isn't it? Convince everyone you're somewhere else, doing something else.
It could be seen that way, but this is vital. The sources are also clear that God is ultimately sovereign. Satan's power isn't absolute.
Right, he's a created being.
Yeah.
Fallen, but created.
Yes. His power is real, his influence is real, but it's limited and temporary. Ephesians 2.2 called him the prince of the power of the air.
The air.
Yeah.
Like the atmosphere around us. This realm.
Signifying his influence in this present world system, this age. But he's a prince, not the king of kings. His authority is permitted, not inherent.
Okay, so we know where he is now, roughly what he's doing. What about his future? Does Revelation especially give us a roadmap for his ultimate end?
It does. Revelation 20 gives a pretty clear sequence. First, there's a period where Satan is seized and bound. Yes, thrown into the abyss or the bottomless pit for 1,000 years. The stated reason, to keep him from deceiving the nations anymore.
So a temporary lockdown, specifically to stop the deception.
A temporary restriction of his main activity on earth, but it's not the final step.
What happens after the 1,000 years?
He's released for a short time, there's a final rebellion, and then comes the ultimate judgment. Revelation 20, verse 10.
Okay.
And the devil, who deceived them, was thrown into the lake of burning sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet had been thrown. They will be tormented day and night forever and ever.
Thrown into the lake of fire. As a prisoner, essentially.
As a recipient of judgment. Tormented, not tormenting. Suffering, not ruling. That's his end.
So the lake of fire isn't his command center. It's his final punishment. Wow. Okay, knowing all this, understanding he's active here now, but faces that future. How should this impact someone listening? Should we be scared?
I don't think fear is the intended response. Awareness, maybe. Preparedness, definitely. But ultimately, it should drive us towards reliance on Christ.
Because Christ has already won the decisive victory.
That's what Colossians 2.15 says so powerfully. Christ disarmed the rulers and authorities, made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them by the cross. The victory is secured.
But as we've established, the mop-up operation, the battle in this age, it's still ongoing. So how do we, practically engage?
Well, awareness is step one, recognizing the battle is real and present. And then, active resistance. James 4.7 is so direct. Submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you.
Resist him. But how? What does that look like?
It requires knowing his tactics, deception, temptation, accusation. And it requires drawing strength from God. The primary weapon Paul mentions in Ephesians 6.
The armor of God passage. The sword of the Spirit.
The sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. Knowing the truth, holding on to Scripture, countering the lies with what God has actually said, that's key.
So truth is the antidote to deception.
It absolutely is. Understanding reality from God's perspective dismantles the illusions Satan tries to create.
Okay, so the big takeaway from this deep dive seems pretty clear. The devil's main turf, his current operational zone, isn't hell, it's here, earth. Which makes this spiritual battle a very present reality for you listening right now.
Exactly. And maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. How does knowing this, knowing he's active here, influencing things now, rather than being locked away, how might that change the way you look at the world around you? The news, the cultural trends, even your own personal struggles and temptations.
Yeah, it definitely puts a different lens on things. Not seeing him ruling hell, but prowling earth.
It shifts the focus from maybe a distant future problem to an immediate ongoing reality we need to navigate with wisdom and faith.
Absolutely something to chew on. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.